All right. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to see you, and thank you for joining us again on our lovely Candid Career Convos. Before we get started in the conversation, we want to take a moment to honor the traditional lands that we're on. We're seated on the traditional and the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically on the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen First Nations, who continually care for and sustain the land that we're on. And as we think about this time in our lives, and we kind of reflect, we invite you to reflect on the lands that you're on and what the land is giving you, providing for you, cherishing and nourishing your bodies. So just take a moment to maybe reflect on that and how it's helping to sustain yourself as well. All right, let's continue on. So this whole Candid Career Convos, many of you have joined us faithfully each month, and so you may know that the origins of the name Kaiso Careers, which comes from the Shalima and myself's background, where our parents are originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and the name Kaiso, it really originates from the songs and the music that come from Trinidad and Tobago, which was used to actually help people navigate and kind of navigate and Shalina, help me out here. My brain.
Navigate and communicate with each other when they were made not to, and to be like barred that ability to connect and to create community. And so by calling this Kaiso Careers, we are really trying to build that community back and those open lines of communication, sharing of stories, sharing of experiences that can really pull us together. And so that kind of brings us to us. So we're your hosts. I'm Shalima, and I'm excited to do this and continue creating this space for this session and this work. My background has been in communications and marketing, and I moved into more leadership development. And now I kind of pull all that together in the equity, diversity, and inclusion space. And I'm a partner with an organization that does audits, assessments, consulting in the space of EDI. And so I'll hand it over to Shelly to share a bit about herself.
Thank you, Shalima. As some of you know, I'm balancing the joy of motherhood with a little one down here. And outside of that, I work as an instructor at Langara College, which I'm on maternity leave right now. And my focus at Langara College is usually to help people navigate through their careers. Outside of working at Langara, I also often do contract work focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion, intercultural training, and I enjoy volunteering in organizations that are often Black-led spaces to help amplify the voices of our community members. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Brings us to the topic of our session today, or themed the Audacious Bragg Session. And we do that because it's Black History Month. And so often, especially as we talk about careers, sometimes our contributions as Black people and as people of color, as well as Indigenous folks, is not recognized. And sometimes we don't know how to either share our accomplishments, how to talk about them, but then also we have that added pressure of people not always seeing what we're doing. And so we want to give that time to indulge in some audacious bragging in the amazing things that we are doing. Just our everyday, going through life can be something that is done amazingly well. We're like mini superheroes when we think about some of the things that we may come across being Black or being a person of color within our society. And so it's really, looking to celebrate that during this month. But then also, how do we pull that into our careers and ensure that that actually is supporting us as well, that acknowledgement of who we are and what we bring.
Thank you, Shalima. One of the things that comes up when we talk about this idea of audacious brag, and it came up quite a bit in our last session with Antonia, really being able to be bold and share our talents and our skills with others. As Shalima mentioned, given that it's Black History Month and we think about all of the amazing contributions that our people have made across the world, oftentimes we notice that sometimes our folks tend to humble ourselves to the point where we don't speak up and share the great works that we've done. And again, this is kind of why we decided this month we really wanted to take some time to focus on what are we doing well. Let's highlight that boldly and share it with others. So I think, Shalima, did you want to share a little bit of that TED Talk that kind of spoke to this topic?
Yeah. So it really was sharing a bit about like what I took from a particular TED Talk, and I can't remember the name of the person right now, but essentially she talked about being the child of immigrants in the US. And her dad would tell her to just keep your head down, focus on your work, let your work speak for yourself. You'll do amazing things if you just let your work speak for yourself. You got to work twice as hard, but once you get that done, people will recognize your contributions. And so she ended up moving into a really great position, a high-powered position. And she found that she was, very quiet. So she would keep her head down. She would do her work. And certainly there's nothing wrong with that in being more quiet. However, the specific role that she had was one where you had to be able to share your opinion. They're looking for her perspective and insight. That was part of her role, was to be able to speak up and share her thoughts and her opinions. And so it was recognized by one of her managers that, we're not hearing from you. And, we hired you for your skill, for your brain, for what you're thinking. And so we want to hear more from you and what you're thinking. Like, that's actually what you're hired for. And she had to go through a real big mindset shift in understanding that her work is not actually going to just speak for herself. She actually has to actively and proactively share that with others. And it's not just in those moments of sharing her thoughts and opinions, but it's also those moments of speaking up about what she has contributed, what she has achieved, because people may not always pick up on that. And so over some time of coaching from this manager, she really learned how to step into her own accomplishment and be able to speak to that, use it as a confidence piece for herself. It's interesting because it's, this is not unlike some of the, comments that I've heard from different folks. I remember one Black woman was like, you know what? I just need maybe a white guy to be my coach, because they have all this audacity. They'll go in and, share their thoughts, and they do it with confidence, and I don't have that. And maybe I just need to get a white guy to be a coach. And it's like, okay, I understand where that's coming from, but we can also just do that ourselves and take control of how we show up ourselves. And I think what's helpful, we have Razi here, who's a coach as well, having that connection and understanding is also important. So it doesn't mean that you have to find someone who is vastly different from you to be a coach. It's about looking within yourself to find I'm not activating. Are there things that I could lean into? What are the things that may be holding me back from leaning into that? So when we were talking about this TED Talk that was coming up, one of the things that came up around this was imposter syndrome, and really questioning the right to be in a space. And it could happen without us even realizing that we're questioning ourselves. So this individual who had this experience of, her dad kind of sending her messages that, no, you're supposed to just do your work and don't make too much fuss. you know, she may not have realized where that was coming from until it was pointed out to her. And so, you know, how can we do that self-check as to what messages we've grown up with, what cultural norms may be dictating how we act without us even realizing it? How could our history, the that we've grown in, our cultures, and you know, holding us back from our full potential, whatever that may look like. So.
Absolutely. What you spoke about, Shalima, and I mentioned this when we were chatting the other day, it really echoed what I heard this week in another session I was in with a Black woman who spoke about her experiences being an immigrant. And again, watching her parents do that same thing of keeping their head down, focusing on their job, not wanting to ruffle feathers, and how that kind of imprinted in her mind. However, it was interesting because she spoke about how she would often get into quote unquote trouble because that didn't sit right with her. She was kind of going against that grain, and she would walk to the beat of her own drum. And so when we think about how sometimes the messages of our families play into how we move through this world, we invite you at this point to think about some of those conversations, phrases, stories that maybe families and friends have shared with you, maybe unintended, or with intentions of goodwill, and how they may have played a role in creating that imposter syndrome for yourself.
Some of the things that come to mind for me are things like, you know, again, keep your head down, like all of that just really resonates with me. But also, you know, messages that if you're involved in church, sometimes there can be messages there about, you know, a rich man can't pass through the eye of a needle, I think it is, or a camel could pass through the eye of the needle faster than a rich man. I can't remember the full quotation, but there seems to be kind of this perception around wealth and acquiring wealth and standing out that could be negative, where in fact, you know, there's many religions that actually pray for wealth, like they will pray upon you for wealth and prosperity. So it's just interesting to think about, like, you know, some of like even just the parables or stories that my family has told me that could reinforce that that behavior of not speaking up. So, yeah. So we wanted to give you a chance to connect with each other and to talk about some of either the stories or, you know, statements or comments of wisdom that may have been passed down to you that really can have an impact on how you move through the world when it comes to workspaces or being someone who can speak up or not. And again, it might be from your family, it might be from culture, it might be from religious backgrounds, but these are some of like the stories, the tales that really shape who we are, and can have an impact on how we think about ourselves. Hi, Joy.
So with this size, do we still want to do breakout room, Shalima, or?
No, I think
okay. So I'm going to stop recording at this point.